roughly at a third of the height of the pyramid. That enabled you to put half or more of the blocks in place. And so we envisioned a big ramp that would get to that level, and then after that, a smaller ramp that wrapped around the pyramid, built off the pyramid itself. Because at that point, you're handling smaller blocks, and there are far fewer blocks to be placed. And so that struck us as a rational way to do it.
The secondary ramp would have been attached to layers of limestone overhanging the pyramid blocks. Once the last block was laid, the ramp would have been removed from the summit down. But to complete his construction plan, Craig had to take into account one final stage. Only at the very top of Khafre's pyramid are there any traces of this final step.
Well, the pyramids look impressive enough today as they are, but if you imagine that when they were first finished, they would have been coated from top to bottom in smooth white limestone from Tura across the river, then the effect must have been truly dazzling. Most of this casing has been stripped off many centuries ago to build the city of medieval Cairo. But if I hold up a piece of Tura limestone and let the sun reflect on it, you can see just how dazzling the pyramids must have first appeared.
Craig works from the theory that the limestone facing would have been applied as the ramp was being removed. With his construction of the process now in place, he could finally attempt to corroborate the numbers that Zahi had drawn from the site. Would his analysis support Zahi's theory of 20,000 workers? Or would he find that more were needed to complete the project? Putting the finishing touches on his detailed work plan for the Great Pyramid, Craig made use of graphs, forecasting, and a great deal of personal experience and training. His complex project schedule took on the same form as those he created for his modern undertakings. At last, he was ready to reveal his results.
Our studies indicated 2 to 3 years to prepare for construction, 5 years to actually construct the pyramid, and 2 years or so to remove the ramps and clean up and finalize the site. We found that the peak workforce had occurred in the 4th, 5th, and 6th year of construction, when a lot of laborers were required to move the blocks up the ramps onto the pyramid, and that was about 40,000 people.
Like modern work plans with tight budgets and hard deadlines, Craig's figure of 40,000 was based on the minimum number of workers required to complete the job in the shortest amount of time, a span of just 10 years. But the historical evidence suggests that each of the pyramids was built during the reign of one king, approximately 20 years. With double the amount of time, Smith concluded that each pyramid could have been completed with far fewer workers.
His maximum workforce for the Great Pyramid was something on the order of 40,000, but perhaps it could have been done for somewhere as low as 20,000. And that's getting right in line, first of all, with Egyptologists' assumptions, and they're coming at it from another point of view. But the evidence, the data that we're finding, yeah, I think is pointing to an order of magnitude of 10, 20,000 people altogether.
But in order to figure out the significance of the pyramids to later generations, the archaeologists still had to find out who the builders had been. Zahi turned back to the tombs, looking for the missing links that would definitively establish who these people were, where they were from, and what had motivated them to take part in this massive project.
That they were Egyptians. They were not people who came out of the space. They were not came from lost civilization as we hear these days. Many stories that do not really have any truth in it at all.
But would the bones support Zahi's contention that the workforce was Egyptian? Before the discoveries at Giza, Scientists in Cairo had been analyzing the DNA of modern Egyptians. Now they had managed to successfully extract DNA from the ancient bones. A genetic comparison would be able to establish whether a relationship existed. The results were definitive.
People who are living here, they are the same as the people who had been living 6,000 years ago, okay? And now the moderns are the descendants of the ancient Egyptians.
The DNA confirmed a close relationship between the modern Egyptians living in the Nile Valley and the ancient workers who had been buried there. For Zahi, this was an extremely significant find.
It proves, for no doubt, that the builder of the pyramids were Egyptian. And you know, if they were not Egyptian, they will never be buried here. They will never be buried in the same method of the ancient Egyptian. You do not have any doubt to tell us that those people were not Egyptians at all. They were Egyptian by blood.
The bones had even more information to reveal. The DNA work on the modern Egyptians had exposed regional genetic variations around the country. There were noticeable differences in people's DNA based on where in Egypt they were from. When Momena looked for these same variations in the ancient bones, she found some startling correspondences.
حضرتك يمكن عشان هنا الريست بتاع السكال هنا مش مستريح كويس.
From our preliminary studies, we can see people coming from the whole Nile Valley, coming from the very upper, the Aswan to the Nile Delta. And so I can say that all the Nile Valley citizens at that time, they were participating in the building of the pyramids.
To add to the wealth of